Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga, where previously the two celebrities that Casey is remembering who attacked Sonia are now coming after Casey and Henry, believing them to have Sonia's camera. But Pierce shows up and hands it over, angering Casey as she believes that she's now getting neither her Pokemon nor the evidence. But Pierce lets them know he's already removed the memory card. As they analyze the information, they catch sight of the real culprits, but it's too blurry to make out. So Pierce has a plan to lure the two back to Spikemuth. Meanwhile, as Sonia awakens in the hospital, she and Leon reconcile over what happened in the past and a lot of what happened that caused her to drop out of the gym challenge. But she also reveals that Chairman Rose is in league with the two celebrities to bring about the darkest day. Hearing this, Leon summons the gym leaders to confront Chairman Rose at Rose Tower, and after having a confrontation with the revealed celebrities Swordward and Shieldbird, and the two escaping, Henry and Casey head to Rose Tower as well, to hopefully get back Casey's remaining Pokemon, alongside Bade, who wants some answers, as well as Hop and Marnie. As with everything going on, they can't really complete the gym challenge. Oleana tries to intervene and keep people from climbing the tower, but the young trainers manage to make their way up, only for, well, Oleana did say that Rose wasn't there, and she was in fact telling the truth, as he's actually in Hammerlock, and he begins the darkest day as Pokemon begin to Dynamax all across Galar, and the Pokemon that he had been feeding the wishing stars to, Eternatus, is now massive and looming above Hammerlock. What'll happen next? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, we start with Chapter 26, Cracked, the Rusted Sword and Shield. We pick up with Raihan and Leon, with Raihan calling out, "Let's do this! The dragon roars!" While Leon says, "Gigantamax!" And Raihan Gigantamaxes his Duraludon, while Leon Gigantamaxes his Charizard, which, gotta get Charizard in there. The two Pokemon are now back-to-back, taking on several Dynamax Pokemon. Raihan calls out for Duraludon to use G-Max Depletion, while Leon calls out for Charizard to use G-Max Wildfire. Meanwhile, a dark cloud looms above. We then see the aftermath of the fight, where Leon and Raihan high-five, as Nissa and Sonia watch on. Several, I think, league staff or other gym trainers in the area tend to the Pokemon they managed to take out. Raihan saying, "Great work, champion." While Leon says, "Phew, that should be all the Dynamax Pokemon in Hammerlock handled now." The trainer says, "Seems so." Nessa calls out, "That's Galar's top 2 for you. I hardly had a chance to do anything." With Raihan put his arm around Leon and giving a thumbs up. Leon then turns to Sonia saying, "You alright, Sonia?" Sonia, examining the Pokemon, says, "A black storm appeared in the sky and immediately gigantified Pokemon all around. Then those Pokemon lost control and rampaged about. It's just like the legend. The darkest day has happened. No, just like Chairman Rose had planned with that duo. They made it happen." Nessa then grabs a hold of Sonia's arm, saying, "Sonia, over there." It's hard to say who the speech bubble's coming from, but I think it's Leon saying, "Huh? Is that another darkest day thing?" They look to the top of Hammerlock, and up on top is Eternatus, looming above. We then cut back over to Route 10, where we see Magnolia's RV making its way through. Casey calls out, "After what bridge is? That bridge is White Hill Tunnel. Once we get through there, we'll get to Hammerlock." Magnolia then notices something in the road, and it quickly applies the brakes. She sees what seems to be some kind of tree and landscape blocking their path. She peeks out her window. She says, "I don't recall there being a place like this on the way to Winden before." Henry peeks out too, saying, "There's a path of sorts." Magnolia says, let's try following it. And she drives up the hill. As the RV starts to rattle, Marvin says, awfully bumpy, isn't it? As Henry says, I think it's more like the ground is moving. They then spot something as they make their way over, a pair of slanted eyes peeking back at them. Oh no, they're on top of a Gigantamax Snorlax. Casey calls out, whoa, reverse, reverse! And Magnolia does just that. Pierce peeks out of the RV saying, what's going on? Casey shouts back, a Gigantamax Snorlax broke down the bridge. We can't get across. Pierce, seeing the sight, says, oh, bother. Casey shouts out, we're going to look for a different way around. As she uses her iPad, she says, geez, why has it got to be the other bridge that's fine? But Henry says, that's it. Professor, please turn around and head towards White Hill Station. Marvin then says, but the railway's been shut down for safety. Henry says, my point exactly. If the trains aren't running, then that means the road is open, doesn't it? What do you think, Professor? Oh, God. Magnolia goes silent, and then she locks in, saying, I wonder how many years it's been since that time I was the emergency transport for the gravely injured Pokémon. I had to dodge the trains that time, though. Oh, God. Extreme Granny. Marvin says, so you've done this before. As Magnolia shifts around and heads back, she says, careful, everyone be careful not to bite your tongues. You see a lot of the gym leaders in the back trying to just hold on for dear life, as it looks like Bade is about to lose her lunch. As Opal just calmly says, he is hoping there's no Dynamax Pokemon sleeping on the rails. Right? Ooh, also, in the background I see Alistair with his Gengar. We cut back over to Hammerlock as Nissa, Sonia, Leon, and Raihan make their way inside. A voice then calls out, now we're entering the most important phase. Are the two of you ready? The group then spots Swordbird and Shieldbird talking to someone. Swordbird says, of course, but of course. While Shieldbird says, in fact, we could even say you're late in reaching out. Oh, how many of our ancestors have been made to wait. The person then directs them inside a door, saying, the elevator's here, if you please, sirs. Who's this guy who's talking to? I thought they were talking to Rose for a second. Leon then looks to Raihan, saying, who are they? With Raihan saying, no clue. But Sonia then pulls on the two of them, saying, those guys just now. They're the ones Chairman Rose met with. As Sonia heads over and bangs on the closed elevator door, I should say, Raihan says, seriously? Sonia says, deadly. How could anyone mistake those colors, not to mention their hairstyles? And they didn't just summon the darkest day. It sounds like they still aren't done. Raihan then tells her, we can get into the plant from here. And Leon brings out his Charizard, and he and Sonia ride on it. While Raihan brings out his Flygon, and he and Nessa ride on that. Meanwhile, with Magnolia and the others, they're making their way closer to their destination. Casey calls out, pointing through the window, there it is, Hammerlock! Suddenly, there's a broadcast with the announcer saying, coming to you from Hammerlock. This is an emergency broadcast. Several hours ago, a black storm suddenly appeared in the skies above Hammerlock. Then, Pokemon all across Galar began to Dynamax. However, that isn't all there is to the situation. Take a look. A giant Pokemon has appeared from the black storm. We see that the reporter and the cameraman are at the top of the tower and actually have a pretty good view of Eternatus. The reporter says, it's perched itself atop the energy plant's Galar particle absorption tower, and it's surveying the area. Casey shouts, what's that? While Henry grabs her shoulder, saying, there wasn't a Pokemon like that on the tapestries or the geoglyph. Is the darkest day the calamity from the sky? That Pokemon? Oh, it's all just a setup. I was wondering why a reporter was at the top of the tower conveniently. It's a setup. As enters Swordbird and Shieldbird. Swordbird saying, it's dangerous, milady. While Shieldbird says, please get back. The reporter in a deadpan voice says, oh my, who are you? They bow, saying, I'm Shieldbird. and I'm Swordward. And they then say in unison, we are the descendants of Galar's founding heroes. In other words, we are of royal blood. Casey shouts in shock, well, Casey and Henry and Marvin, while Hoff says, those jerks. The reporter then begins interviewing them as Swordward says, some may know of it from the Bidoo-Drop-In statue, or from the tapestry in Hammerlock Vault of the legend of the heroes who drove away the calamity from the sky, sword and shield in hand. The reporter then glances back at the cue cards being held by the one dude who let Swordward and Shieldbird into the elevator, saying, I know, those heroes became the founding kings of Galar, right? So that means you two are related to them then? Oh my God. I honestly would have loved this if this was in the main game. This would have been so much better if in the main game. Just, oh man. The manga is doing such a better way of doing this storyline. Swordward says, oh yes, and this is proof. Swordward and Shieldbird then hold aloft the rusted sword and rusted shield. And Henry goes dead serious immediately. The reporter then asks, what are those? Swordward and Shieldbird say, they are called the rusted sword and rusted shield. They then point to Eternatus, saying, our ancestors took this sword and shield and fought off the calamity from the sky. Eternatus. This is the best way of filling in all of Galar into what's going on. Like, again, I get it. It interrupts the whole Pokemon League championship and all that. But look, if it's going to be interrupted anyway in the game, I honestly would have just liked it to have, just happen like this. Like, these two idiots just coming onto the scene and just laying this all out makes so much more sense than Chairman Rose just doing it out of nowhere like an idiot. The reporter then in very serious shock says, Eternatus, that's that thing's name? The two say, indeed. Shieldbird says, Eternatus has appeared in modern ages, while Swordward says, thus it is none other than our duty to dispose of it. Marnie then gets steamed, saying, what is this, some sort of joke? While Pia says, it's staged. The Tele Network people are in on it too. Grand. Cabo then says, royalty no one knew about, descendants of the heroes. Right? Opal then says, that might be the very thing driving this incident. Oh god, I'm forgetting his name. It's a lot of names to remember, okay? Gordy then says, you mean they're doing all of this to get the treatment they want as the hero's descendants? Melanie then questions, why did they wait until now then? Bade, still very car sick, says, and why did the chairman go out of his way to help them? Pierce tells them, I knew he had a penchant for helping the troubled, but I didn't think he'd do it at the cost of troubling all of Galar. Suddenly, Kabu's robot phone starts to ring. He answers saying, hello? All right, got it. As he hangs up, Milo questions, everything all right? Kabu tells everyone, there are a lot of Dynamax Pokemon in Motorstone. It's getting to be too much for my trainers to handle on their own. Opal speaks up saying, it might be good for all of us to return to our own cities for a bit then. Gym leaders are an important source of moral support, you know. Melanie gives a nod. Opal then says out loud, on that note, I suppose I'll take my leave. I'm a bit knackered from all this running around. I'll leave this to you, Bade. Yep, handing it fully over. Alistair then says, if I go, no point, Miss Bay, go instead. He fully means to say, if I go, there'll be no point, Miss Bay, please go instead. Bay says, but I'm inexperienced. I can't help everyone feel safe. I love that they're both so lacking in confidence. Pia says, no need to bicker. We'll call you if things get bad, so you can both head back. Melanie calls out, I'll stay. Oh, Gordy says, I'll head back. And both pause for a moment since they haven't been on the same page in quite some while. Marnie then turns to Pia saying, what about you, bro? Pia says, I'll go back if they call for me. I mean, yeah, because his area doesn't really have a power spot, so it's like, does Spike must really need it? And Magnolia continues down the rails. Casey calls out to everyone else saying, "We've made it to Hammerlock!" But not missing a beat, Henry is already leaping out the door, bounding over the ticket checker for the train. As Casey calls out, "Where you going, Sword?" Bade then hands over some money to the train attendant saying, "Here's our fare. We came from White Hill Station." The attendant is kind of perplexed as Bade then says, "Please charge the fine for driving a car over the rails and any other fees to our driver." He then makes his way out. Pop then says, "I think I get why Opal wanted to make him a gym leader." Monty says, "Same here." Melanie shakes Magnolia's hand saying, "Thank you for all your help, Professor. Please take care of everyone else." Magnolia says, "Of course." As the gym leaders who need to head back to their, respective locations are taken off by Magnolia, Bade calls out from the back of the RV, "All right, Piers, make sure to call us if things get bad, please." Meanwhile, Raihan and Nessa are up above, flying over Hemlock, with Raihan saying, "Damn it, did they really have to close off the access hatch?" Of course they closed it. They knew you'd try to come through. The Raihan then spots Sword, saying, "Oh, if it isn't Sword." Henry says, "Mr. Raihan, Mr. Leon, Miss Sonia, Miss Nessa too." Oh God, it's a jumbled mess of everyone shouting over each other. Leon says, "Where's Chairman Rose?" Henry says, "Miss Oleana said he'd be in the energy plant." Raihan says, "For real?" Bates says, "She said we'd be able to freely enter too." Nessa says, "Huh? But we couldn't. It was locked." Sonia says, "I was chasing after the men who attacked me after they went underground." Piers then says, if you're wondering where those Pratts went, they said on air that they were going to battle Eternatus." Sonia says, what?" Hop then shouts, "Lee!" Leon then shouts, "Hop!" Oh, Casey says, "Stop! We've got to stop and share our info." Bade is then on his phone saying, "Hello, the energy plant is locked and we can't get in. What is the meaning of this, Miss Oleana? We're here too early. You're the one who needs to get your calculations in order." He then turns to everyone else saying, "It should be open now." And now everyone's crowded in the elevator, and I think everyone's sharing their information on the way up. This is a lot more people than in the game. Oh my God. But I feel like it works better this way. As they reach the top floor, everyone stands in shock as they see none other than Chairman Rose. As they make their way into the central platform, Leon looks around saying, "What's going on? Are you all right, Chairman?" Rose then says, "Have a look. The energy conversion system is in full operation. How many years has it been since we were last able to run it without worrying about how many Gala particles we had left? My plan has been a remarkable success." Which, that's him admitting to everything right there and then, so there's no really getting around that he was coerced into this or not. It's like, no, he's just admitting it. All right, next we head into Chapter 27, Shock. Chairman Rose's plan. As Rose declares, "The darkest day has begun. My plan is a huge success." But a very serious Henry says, "What plan? Summoning a calamity and destroying the Gala region?" Rose then takes a moment and says, he turns with tears in his eyes saying, "Destroy Gala, you say? Horrible. How could you say that, Sword?" Sonia says, "No way." Everyone's taken aback while Bade is pissed off at Henry. Rose shouts at them, "Didn't I tell you? This is my plan to protect Gala's future 100 years from now." While Piers says, "Dynamax Pokemon have gone wild all over Gala. You're really telling us to trust you with all of the human casualties and property damage caused?" Leon then grabs Sonia, saying even Sonia's life was put in danger. Rose seems to be visibly worried, saying, "What we did to you was inexcusable, Sonia. It was careless of me to let you overhear my conversation with Shortwood and Shieldberg. But we've taken measures to counteract all of the Dynamax Pokemon. So please, don't worry." He brings up several video feeds of League staff taking on the Dynamax Pokemon. Oh no, Macrocosmos staff. As Rose says, Macrocosmos and its affiliates have formed a temporary elite task force. We have it all under control. You've met them before, haven't you, Sword? When Marvin captured his Dracovic. Casey says, back then. Henry's taking a bit aback, saying, so you know it was me. Rose then chuckles, saying, now I should take my leave. You all cheer on the heroes from here. You'll understand what I'm saying isn't a lie. But as he tries to make his way off, Leon tries to reach for Rose, only for his hand to phase right through him. Melanie comes up, poking at the figure of Rose, saying, it was a hologram. Everyone else pokes at weird places like, guys, come on. As Rose says, I'm sorry, everyone. I can't afford to let you get in Swordwood and Shieldbird's way. I'm a man of my word, you see. Sonya then speaks up, saying, Chairman, please, let me ask you one thing. Rose says, yes, Sonya? Sonya questions, Swordwood and Shieldbird, are those two really the hero's descendants? Are they Galarian royalty? Rose, looking a bit despondent, says, I can see why you might doubt that, especially since there's hardly any literature or data published about Galar's royalty or the heroes. Sonya questions, published? You mean that literature and data on them exists? Rose says, of course. I suppose it's less that things haven't been published, but more that their family has been hiding things for generations and preventing them from being published. Sonya questions, hiding them? Why? Rose tells them, it's like the mural on Stowenside. That mural, it's begun, as now Swordward and Shieldbird, with their Bronze Song and Goliathpod, face off against Eternatus. Also, yes, Eternatus is not one of my favorite Pokemon. I mean, I had Eternatus for a while, but it's just like, I don't really go for legendaries that often. And it's cool in its own way, but it's not my fave. All the while Rotom Drone is taking pictures of what's going on, video of it. Shieldbird tells his Bronze Song to use a noble extrasensory, while Swordwood says for his Goliathpod to use a mudshot of royal proportions. Nessa then says, unnecessary embellishments aside. Melanie says, they're not bad. Leon notes, ground and psychic moves worked, while Sonya says, looked like they were super effective too. They then both question in unison, think it's a poison type? But Eternatus then finally reacts, directing his attention at the two Pokemon, delivering a massive blast that seems to instantly down Swordward and Shieldbird's Pokemon. Sonya questions flamethrower. It took out Goliathpod, a water type, in one hit. So is it a poison and fire type? Meanwhile, Raihan is trying the elevator, saying, the lifts to the top of the plant and to the basement are both disabled. The access hatch is sealed too. We're completely shut in. Henry then questions, could we try melting or burning it with our Pokemon's moves? Raihan says, I already tried that when I was a kid. This plant was built so that nothing like that would work. They probably kept Eternatus here. It was designed to keep it from escaping. There might be a route for some Pokemon to get through. Meanwhile, Casey is trying to access the computer systems, with Piers asking, any luck reaching the outside world, Shield? Casey says, not a bit. I thought I could get through with a hologram or relay via sender-receiver terminal, but I can't connect. Piers, looking dejected, says, so we can't expect help from the other side. Hop then shouts out to Leon, we can't just stay here and watch, Lee. Let's search for a way out too. But Leon just folds his arms, saying, I don't know anything about the plant or about machines, but I know Pokemon battles better than anyone else. Hop, take a good look. When they can't hold Eternatus back anymore, it's up to us to fight. We'll have a better chance of victory if we can gather at least a little info about our opponent. He slaps his cheek, saying, watch his movements and reactions too, not just his moves. Observe, read, and reason. Hop does the same, slapping his cheek, saying, all right. With Sonya smiling in the back. Melanie then says, if we lose, there's no telling what kind of danger Galar will be in. We can't just ask for a rematch tomorrow or to try again next year. I think Nessa then says, yeah, We can't lose. We then cut to Chairman Rose observing the battle from the top of the tower. Suddenly his phone rings. He answers saying, "What's the matter, Oleana?" Oleana in a control room at Winden in Rose Tower says the Gala particles are increasing in proportion with the spread of the darkest day's force. However, we have not achieved the required numbers. Actually, that's a good point. I don't remember in the game if when they unleashed Eternatus, did they get all the power they wanted, or was it just too out of control? Rose questions the cause. Oleana says, "We don't know." Rose then asks, "How much time will it take to achieve the planned amount?" Oleana responds, about 3 to 5 times what we originally calculated, they say. Rose then questions, "Is there any word from other division?" Oleana tells him, "They're expressing worry about the differences between the darkest day depicted in the geoglyphs and tapestries and the darkest day currently happening. They think that perhaps it was..." Oh wait, no, Rose says, "They think that perhaps it was caricatured, yes?" Oleana says yes. Rose then asks, "Do you think it will evolve or shift into a form like the one drawn in the pictures and help us reach the expected value within the time period?" "That was helpful, thank you." He then hangs up. Rose then calls out, "Swordward, Shieldbert! Apparently Eternatus still hasn't gotten serious yet. Please, give it your all." The two then grow angry as Swordward says, "How dare he be so arrogant? He's nothing but an upstart celebrity." Shieldbert then says, You just stay there and keep watching us true celebrities and our magnificent behinds in our noble battle. We, the true heroes, shall finish off the darkest day." They then hold this rusted sword and rusted shield in front of Eternatus, who pauses. Leon and Hop then says, "It flinched." The two celebrities then begin laughing. "Just as we thought. The rusted sword and rusted shield are the source of the power that vanquished Eternatus before." They then say in unison, "Eternatus, you are not worthy of being feared. Judgment be upon you." But nothing happens. Shieldbird questions, "What's going on?" While Swordward says, "They're still dingy when used against Eternatus. According to our royal family's legend, they're meant to transform into a glittering sword and shield and manifest their power, like in the statue at the Beto Drop-In." Suddenly, Eternatus swings its tail, knocking back Swordward and Shieldbird, injuring them pretty badly. Shieldbird says, "Oh, big brother, I hurt all over." While Swordward says, "My nose is bleeding, little brother." When Eternatus goes to strike them again, they hold the two artifacts in front of their faces, only for Eternatus to knock them out of their hands. Eternatus then rams its head into the two, sending them flying off of the top of Hammerlock. Oh god. As the two plummet, they're saved by Chairman Rose's, you know what? I never remember this Pokemon's name specifically. Like, oh my god. Frothorn. Yeah, Frothorn. I actually don't think I've ever actually owned this Pokemon in any game. Not that I can remember, at least. Rose sighs, saying, "I had a feeling this would happen. The hidden sculpture and the torn, discarded fifth tapestry. How much have you tried to falsify and hide the truth?" Swordward and Shieldbird angry say, "Bastard, you pretended to work with us while orchestrating our downfall." Rose then says, "Don't be silly. I so wish the heroism you two speak of, no, that you two misinterpret were true. Oleana, we're moving to Plan B. I'm leaving the rest to you." Rose then turns to confront Eternatus. He locks eyes with the creature and brings out his Dynamax band and Gigantamaxes his Capraja to confront Eternatus. Oh, when did that happen? Hold on. Oh, that was the two Pokeballs that they dropped. Okay, I thought it was just their Pokeballs from their regular Pokemon. But Swordward and Shieldbird had dropped Casey's Phalanx and Stunkfish? What was it called again? Stunfisk. Yeah, Stunfisk. There we go. In a moment that we almost rarely usually see nowadays, the two Pokemon rammed their Pokeballs into the side of the moat around Hammerlock to release them into the water. The two then look around for Casey and the rest of their allied Pokemon. Suddenly, I think it's Bade's Hetram, there we go, seems to detect something going over to one of the pipes and sends some kind of signal through one of it, getting the attention of Phalanx and Stunkfish. Stunkfish manages to rip the bars off of one of the pipes. The two then nod, ready to head in. Okay. We then cut back over to Postwick in the slumbering well, as we see a little rock formation outside the altar in the water on the lake. Suddenly it begins to shine brighter and brighter. Meanwhile, back into where Casey and Henry and the others are being contained, suddenly the elevator dings. They shout, huh? The lift started moving. Piers brings out his obstagoon, ready to face whatever comes out. It is Oleana who very just easily just pushes the guy aside obstagoon, saying, champion, gym leaders, and gym challengers, give us your aid. Oh, I also forgot about Morpeko. Yep, now that things are starting to go pear-shaped, it's like, yeah, we could use a little bit of your help going forward, guys. And it's like, why the heck would we help you? But it's like, also, we kind of still need to, save our home and all that, so we'll help you out now, but you're gonna pay for this. Also, something I do have to kind of note, I'm surprised this artist is being so tame with the way that Oleana looks, because I've said it in the past, this artist tends to give a little bit more cake to the female characters in the series, and I have to admit, it's been very tame when it comes to a lot of the characters here. Like, Melanie wasn't overly kind of despite the fact that she kind of designed like that. I expected more from like Sonya and Bade and stuff like that. But nah, all the female characters have been just kind of on model, I guess. I guess I should be like okay with that, since it's like, it's not overabundance of cheesecake that's distracting. But now that it's gone, I'm kind of like, it's not there anymore. I gotta miss it. I guess I'm a pervert at heart. Alright, and the last chapter of this video is titled Flash, The Return of the Two Pokemon. Wow, that is incredibly straightforward. Not beating around the bush, huh? As Oleana confronts everyone, she says, champion, gym leaders, and gym challengers, give Chairman Rose your aid. Piers questions, are you really in a position to say that? While Casey says, first you get in our way, then you shut us out, then you lock us up. What are you even trying to do? Oleana turns with serious expression, saying, that goes without question. We're trying to protect the Gala's future for the next 1,000 years. Raihan then says, I'm really getting tired of hearing that spiel. Oleana says it's the truth. However, the chairman is easily misunderstood because of his snappy decision. Of course, there are times when his judgment is wrong as well. Melanie then steps forward saying, I'll believe it. Raihan is kind of shocked by this, but Melanie then says, if it'll make everyone happy, act now and save the explaining for and persuading for later. The ends justify the means, right? But sometimes there's no chance for forgiveness if you hurt or lose others in the process. Speaking to our own experience, I actually do have to question the fact that we have Melanie here. I thought either Alistair or Bade would be involved more, all things considered, but no. And this manga kind of chose which gym leaders and which version they kind of favored. But Oleana says, you're exactly right. That's why I would like you to help the chairman before it's too late. Raihan then questions, come to think of it, what happened with the battle between Eternatus and the hero's descendant? Oleana says the rusted sword and rusted shield were completely useless. Those guys were blown away, and in the nick of time the chairman saved them. Now the chairman's going up against Eternatus. Henry, Casey, and Bade all are completely taken aback by this. Casey and Henry grab Leon, with Casey saying, what about Giga and Mega? Oh, Henry says, what happened to the rusted sword and rusted shield? But suddenly someone accesses the elevator. It's Bade, who says, well, we'll find out if we go to the summit. What are you doing, Hitram? We need to go, he says as everyone enters into the elevator. Aw, no, really? As Heatra makes his way over to the elevator and everyone heads up, suddenly Phalanx actually makes his way in the area where everyone just was, with Stunfish making his way in at the last moment too, looking around for Casey. Dang it! That is such BS. Meanwhile, in the battle between Rose and Eternatus, Rose has Copperajah use G-Max Steel Surge, causing a massive explosion at the top that takes everyone down below off guard. Rose is getting exhausted, saying, "No, I still haven't done enough damage to make it get serious. Well, I was never able to become champion after all. I guess this is my limit, huh? Good grief. If that family had just kept their noses out of things, we'd have accurate information that would help us know how to effectively deal with all of this." Okay, so the twins essentially just butted their way in on Rose's plan. I will admit, though, it still made things much more interesting. Rose then stands in shock as Eternatus unleashes a massive fire blast against Copperajah. Rose is kind of taken out by the blast. Meanwhile, everybody else makes their way up to the top as Casey sees Swordward and Shieldbird screaming. It's all still being recorded too, my god. Meanwhile, everybody else sees that the chairman and his Copperajah are down. They shout, "Chairman, we've got your back." Nessa unleashes her Dreadnought on Quagsire? Is that hers? Yeah, that's Nessa's Quagsire. Her two Pokemon put out the flames. Leon then shouts to Raihan, "Now! Chairman, hang in there." They try to help the chairman up, only for Eternatus to start to bring down its tail on them. Melanie and Nessa shout, "Watch out!" only for the tail to stop inches away from hitting them, as Bay's Heatran stopping its attack. Oh, and it immediately evolves into Hatterene? I never know how to pronounce this thing's name. Hatterene. Yeah, okay, Hatterene. Yeah, I think that's right. The newly evolved Hatterene then unleashes a massive psychic attack against Eternatus. Oleana then tends to the chairman as Raihan and Leon go over to Bade, saying, "Thanks, you saved us." Rose then says, "Bade, you saved me too." Bade says, "Huh? You remembered my name?" Rose then has a cheeky moment and says, "Oh dear, I slipped up." Oleana then tells him, "Why don't you drop this ridiculous act?" Rose then says, "Huh? Oleana, you knew?" Oleana smiles, saying, "Of course. Once you'd sent him out on that secret mission to gather wishing stars, there was no way you'd have been unable to remember his name." Bade says, "What's going on here?" I gotta like that a bit better. I don't know. In the game, the idea that Rose was kind of just dismissing Bade didn't really sound right. Like, no, there's more to it. Like, thank you. I'm glad that the game is actually trying to put more towards that relationship. Because the idea that Rose took in Bade and just dismissed him after the fact, it's just kind of like, no, that's some BS. But I guess that's to kind of say that maybe Rose was, I don't know, he's too focused on one thing and he kind of misses the human aspect of certain things. But I don't know, I didn't like that in the game, so having it be that maybe he was just trying to shoo Bade away from what he was about to do and just get him not in any trouble for what Rose was about to do if things went south kind of thing. Meanwhile, with Raihan and Leon, Raihan says, "Did you see that, Leon? Hatterene's dazzling gleam worked." Leon says, "Yeah, that means it's a poison type. And dragon." Raihan calls out, "Miss Melanie, it's your turn." Melanie says, "Gotcha. Oh, that's why she's here. Dragon, weak to ice type. Gotcha." As Raihan brings out his Flygon and Dragapult, while Melanie brings out her Lapras. Marty then calls out to Piers, and Piers says, "How about we get serious? Firstly, hand in glove." Marnie then calls back, "You two, Hop, let's go." With Hop saying, But I don't have any Pokemon with a type advantage." Piers says, "If you don't think you can win, just make sure you don't lose." Hop thinks on this, smacks his cheeks and says, "All right." Okay, so Marnie sends in her, I always remember the Impidimp and Grimmsnarl, but what is the mid-evolution? Morgrim. yeah, Morgrim, like Mordred from, King Arthur and all that. Hop sends in his Snorlax. Piers sends in his Malamar? Because that would be the dark type. Nessa sends in her Quagsire. Melanie sends in her Lapras. Raihan sends in his Flygon. Oh, it's Leon who has the Dragapult. Meanwhile, over with Casey, Sonia has to hold her back from going after the twins as she shouts, "Where are Mega and Giga? Give them back!" The twins say, "Not a clue. If they're not in our pockets, then they must have fallen somewhere." Henry then questions, "The rusted sword and rusted shield." The twins then says, "Who cares about those hunks of rubbish? More importantly, our misery is being broadcast live to people's living rooms." "Hey, cease your filming," they say to the cameraman. So he says, so in short, he brought about the darkest day in order to secure enough energy to sustain Galarian society for the next 1,000 years. Then, once he gathered enough energy, you two were supposed to quell the darkest day. That was your plan? Swordward says, "That's right. Then all of Gala would know of us, the kin of the heroes buried in history." Shilbert says, "And our royal status would have been restored." And Sonia kind of sighs, saying, "So you and the chairman worked together towards your common interest. The fact that you were the hero's kin wasn't enough to give you the power or means to oppose Eternatus." Casey then questions, Wouldn't anybody assume they'd fail? Right? Like, none of you have a backup plan for this? Swordwood says, "Watch your mouth, commoner." Henry then questions, "Did your ancestors not hand down the explanation for how Eternatus was quelled?" Swordward says, "If they did, it would have tarnished the hero's authority." Shieldbird then says, "Our ancestors worked hard for generations to erase the evidence." Oh, God. The rich erasing evidence, huh? Yeah, that sounds about right. But Sonia is aghast, saying, Huh? Then hiding the sculpture behind a mural, getting rid of the 5th tapestry, and making a fake hero statue was all you royals doing? Shilba says, "Indeed." But then Casey says, "Then that means the one who have the power to quell Eternatus are the Sword and Shield Pokémon. Zacian and Zamazenta are the true heroes." The twins then shout, "Stop, commoner!" But Casey continues on with Sonia nodding in the background, saying, "So when your family erased the evidence of Zacian and Zamazenta's efforts, the legend itself disappeared, and then the heroes and the royalty's existence faded from people's memories too. Unbelievable. Buried in history, huh? You get what you deserved." Yeah, it's kind of like you buried one thing, but you also kind of buried yourselves too in the process. Like, people probably would have known and actually thought highly of you if you just kept the legend in. Y'all were so greedy to try to keep all the praise to yourselves, despite the fact that usually when people ally with Pokemon, they're put in the legends too. Like, the dude who had the Lucario in that one movie. He was as much of a legend too. Pokemon trainers bring out the best in their Pokemon, right? When the two twins grit their teeth, Swordwood says, "How annoying. It's so annoying I want to cry." While Shieldbird says, "But we can't cry because we're upside down and our tears are stuck." Sonia facepalms, saying, "Good grief, I don't even have the energy to get mad." While Henry questions, "What's going on with the rusted sword and rusted shield anyway, Sonia? Nothing happened when they held them up to Eternatus, right?" Sonia looks over to the twins, saying, "That could have been because they're phony heroes." Shieldbird says, "Phony, the impertinence." Well, Swordward says, "At least call us something like self-proclaimed heroes," with a little laugh at the end. Casey then realizes something, saying, "Wait a tick, look at the picture of the sculpture. Zacian and Zamazenta are holding them in their mouths, right? Do you think their powers activate when the Pokemon have them?" Henry says, And the reason there are human heroes in the statue too is..." Suddenly the elevator goes off. Swordward says, "The elevator?" While Shieldbird says, "That must be first responders here to take us to the hospital." But something leaps out, clinging on to Casey. She says, "Giga, you're Giga, right? You're soaking wet." Shieldbird says, "Ho, perhaps they fell into the moat below here." Casey then says, "Where is Mega? You're not together." She then looks down and says, Mega! But then she notices something else, saying, Sword! As we see that her sunfish has the rusted sword and rusted shield. Casey says, great job bringing them up here. Henry grabs them with an intensity, but then shouts, ow, and drops them. Casey asks, what's wrong, Sword? Henry says, there's poison. Eternatus says poison is on them. We've got to wash it off. Peccaberry. I've been wondering about their shapes for a while, too. Why aren't they shaped the way they are in the sculpture and hero stature? I've got to restore and reforge them after I get them clean. But then Sonia notices something. She heads over to where Bade is, saying, it's so quiet all of a sudden. Did they beat Eternatus? But then she notices something, saying, what? Oleana then calls out to the chairman and he says, yes. Oleana gets on her phone saying, this is Oleana. Are there any changes in the reading? Sonia heads up to where the battle is happening, saying, did you beat it, Nessa? Nessa says, stay back, Sonia. Oh, Eternatus seems to be down. Brian then says, that doesn't make any sense. No matter how you look at it, it's knocked out, but its pressure has somehow only gotten stronger. Pierce says, I don't know how to put it, but... Leon says, it's like it's filled the atmosphere. Oleana on the phone says, yes. As she hangs up, she tells Rose, they've confirmed a rapid increase in Gala particles, approaching the same rate as in the simulations. Rose tells Bade, Eternatus is getting into its serious mode. Suddenly, a bright light gleams out of Eternatus's body and rises up towards the sky, shocking everyone. Casey shouts, Sword? Sword! She looks over to see Henry knelt over the weapons, seemingly panicking or something. A storm rises above of Hammerlock. Leon shouts, here it comes! Something starts to emerge from the clouds above as Casey goes over to Henry, saying, what's wrong, Sword? Henry tells her, I can't do it. I can't forge the rusted sword and rusted shield. He says with an utterly aghast look on his face. Okay, so knowing what I know about the rusted sword and rusted shield, it's like, I'm wondering if this is, how big of an issue this actually is. Like, that's kind of my thing here. So I am a bit curious as to where this is all going. Not to mention, there's still quite a lot of content left. We're only in the middle of the 5th volume, and there's still volume 6 and 7 left. Honestly, this might be the one storyline that actually has more that needs to happen, because there's still the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra DLC, so I guess that makes sense. I know one of the covers seems to depict stuff from the Isle of Armor. I wonder if they tie it all into dealing with Eternatus. I am curious about all that. But again, I like how all of this is playing out so much better than in the game. You know, now that the games have great ideas, but they don't use them to their fullest. And unlike with Sun and Moon, that I feel like the manga didn't go as far as it could have, here the manga is taking things a lot further. So it kind of almost seems like when story beats aren't really presented as well as they could be, the manga just knocks it out of the park. Even when it came to a lot of the earlier games, the manga just really knew how to elevate it and stuff like that. Put more twists and turns and tie things in such unexpected ways. But with Sun and Moon, it's just kind of like, well, you could have done a little bit more, I feel. But here, it's just like, oh, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot of a lot. So it leaves me kind of wondering, it's just like, what else could you guys kind of do? Like, I'm really wondering how the DLC content fits in. Because, did I say Sun and Moon before? Well, with Sun and Moon, they didn't really go into a lot of the DLC content. Mostly the Rainbow Rocket stuff, which I feel like they kind of could have found a way to bring back all the villains for one last hurrah like they have previously. But I guess with the way a lot of things worked out, especially like with the likes of Archie and Maxie, it's kind of like, yeah, how would they really do? But they figured out a way before, so I feel like they could do the Rainbow Rocket stuff again. But then again, it's not supposed to be the same versions of those characters, but I mean, the remakes, they made it continuations instead, so I guess that could still work. I don't know, maybe some part of me still just kind of holding out hope that they'll adapt that, even though why should they? And I'm also curious if it wouldn't be ending anytime soon. I was about to say, is the Scarlet and Violet adaptation about to end soon, but there's no reason it would, because we're always kind of behind in terms of the adaptions. So yeah, I don't think it would really work out that way. Well, it's hard to say, because Sword and Shield only has 43 chapters. Scarlet and Violet's at like what is it at now? Like 31 apparently. So I don't know, Scarlet and Violet actually might be ending pretty soon. Does that speak to how light the storylines have gotten in terms of their content? Or is it just that the mangaka have become a lot more efficient? Hard to say. Are they not building as cohesive a story as they could or they used to? Well, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din and hope to see you later. So then take care. Bye-bye.